encourage your soul, enlighten your mind, and empower your faith. This is the Light Network. If you want to be a serious Bible student, a successful servant, and a powerful preacher, this is the podcast for you. Hello and welcome to Preachers in Training. My name is Robert Hatfield, and this is the podcast where we talk about all things preaching and ministry. Welcome to Season 14, Episode 6, on which we are going to address yet another listener-requested topic: how congregations can work better together. Looking forward to the discussion, and here to help us from the Jenkins Institute and also Spring Meadows Congregation in Spring Hill, Tennessee, Dale Jenkins is joining us once again. Welcome back. It's always great to have you.
It is always a thrill of my day when I get to be on anything that Robert Hatfield is associated with. Good to be with you.
That is too kind. Thank you very much. I have told you and Jeff many times, but let me just say it again. We appreciate so much what you guys do with the Jenkins Institute and are excited about the transition that you both are making into all this full time. Everybody, if you haven't done it, you got to check it out. thejenkinsinstitute.com. Get on their email list so you never miss any of the many, many things that they release every week. What's the thing that we need to hit, if there's one or two, as we start today about the Jenkins Institute?
Well, there are a couple of things we don't say a lot about. And one that we really love is we started a mentoring program 2 years ago. I actually started last year, or we started year two. It's a 3-year program where we take a man who's not been in ministry a long time or who feels he needs a mentor, and we pair him with an effective minister. And then he gets effective minister for 1 year. Year one, every month, there's an area that minister and the mentoree discuss every month that is germane to effectiveness in ministry or that affects the minister's life. Year two, there's some other things that they do that involve helping the guy in his preaching and learn how to be better at his preaching. And then there's year three. Year three, we've not started yet because we don't know what we're going to do yet with year three. So there'll be a third year as well.
That's really exciting. And if you are listening to this or watching this, you're not a part of this and you're interested in something like that, highly encourage it. You guys open up the window, once a year? I mean, you keep the structure pretty rigid, right?
Yes, it's a September to September program.
Okay.
We try to limit it to 20 guys. We've got the second seating, I think we've got 22 or 23 in, so we'll go a little above that. And at Jeff's insistence, we'll open the window a little wider from September. He said, why don't we give them a month or two if somebody comes in late because they didn't learn about it? I said, well, they can wait till next year. He said, no, we need to let them in. And he's older brother, so we do what he says. Well, honestly, we want this to be effective to guys. It could get too large. We have more mentors than we do mentorees. We have quite a list of those. Some have volunteered, and we've said, all right, and some have volunteered, and we've said, maybe someday. Yeah, it's a really neat little program that we've started that I'm excited about the potential of what it can do to help young guys. We were sitting at a restaurant on a Thursday about 5 years ago, and we started talking about how do we help guys who've been doing this for 5 years or less that need somebody in their life that can kind of help them and advise them and keep them. I don't want to say on the straight and narrow. That's not what we're trying to say, but keep them going a better direction than a worse direction, and feed into them rather than being fed into by books written by people who talk about church growth that have never helped a church grow or who have a different mentality of what even the church is. Yeah. And they're giving our guys instruction on how to grow a church. And their first instruction often is, you're the lead pastor, you do it this way. And then our guys read in and they think, well, this guy's built a big church, so it must be the way to do it. And so there are too many bad mentors out there, too many bad sources to go to. We thought we needed somebody that could be good for them. So,
and the timing of all of that, and then what the last year and a half plus has been, is you just wonder whether that's providential. I mean, we can't speak for God, but That's amazing too. So
it's been a hard year and a half for
yeah.
for preachers. It really has. Ministers, we try hard, but it's not been an easy time.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Good stuff. TheJenkinsInstitute.com. Today, we're talking about congregations working better together. And I wanted somebody like you, Dale, to come in and talk about this a little bit. It can get sticky and hairy, and it depends on the, the history of your area and all of that stuff. I know we've got 8 things in just a minute that you prepared for us as we're going to consider this. Do we need to say anything by introduction before we dive in, or what should we do here? We're ready?
Yeah, I'm ready. Let's do it.
Okay. All right, let's do it. Here are 8 ways congregations can work better together. Where do we start?
Well, we start with the Bible, obviously. A guy named Paul, you remember him.
I've heard of him.
About how we should endeavor to keep the unity of the Spirit and the bond of peace. That verse fascinates me for many, many reasons, but one reason is the little word "keep" there. It doesn't say we make the unity of the Spirit. We keep the unity of the Spirit. Made us one when we were baptized into Christ. A person who is a Christian and another person is a Christian are one, whether they like it or not. Our goal is to keep it. So my first point is, if you want congregations to work together, work better together, you've got to desire it. You've got to want that to happen. And y'all can pull up your own lexicons, endeavor. I mean, what does it mean? It means to endeavor. I mean, make some sort of effort. So if you're not making any effort, how simple is this? If you're not making any effort at all for there to be unity between congregations, you are not endeavoring. So some effort has to be made.
Okay, that is a full bucket that you've just pulled up from the well right there, from Ephesians 4 and everywhere else. Yes, and I don't want to define who is a member of the church any less than the way that the New Testament prescribes it. And I don't want to define a congregation any less than the New Testament describes it either. Sometimes we've got to just trust the Holy Spirit on this one and move forward in his guidance, right?
And we're going to deal with that in some of these other points, but you're absolutely right. Yeah. I mean, I don't want to be more narrow than God or more broad than God, but I do want to be as gracious as I can be, because the grace that I give is the grace I will receive. That's about as biblical as you can get. And if I'm not gracious, God's not going to be gracious to me. And so I better be careful about drawing those lines so tight that tighter than God would draw them.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay. I want unity.
Yes.
So desire it. I want us to work together. I want congregation A and congregation B to work together. Got to desire it. That's one.
Okay. Number two,
get a little dicier, but it's simple. Let's say in the Bible, believe the best.
Yeah.
1 Corinthians 13 says, love believeth all things, to say with the King James there. The ETH obviously notes a continual action. I'm going to believe the best about that congregation. It's easy to get in the mire of wanting, of seeing, of hearing the worst. I want to believe the best. It's easy to think, well, I heard this congregation going bad. What have you heard about this congregation? Well, I heard they're doing this. Well, I want to believe the best. I don't want to believe the worst about my brethren. I want to believe the best. So when we helped be a part of, and we're blessed to be a part of planning the Spring Meadows congregation, there was another congregation in town. It had been here for a long time. They've been about the same size for about 100 years. They were a good church. They were very content where they were. They I don't want to say they didn't want to grow, but they were very, very content. They looked at the growth around them. They didn't think the church could grow, and so they weren't growing any. And so before we planted, the men, I was not a part of that, but before they planted, the men here went to the leaders of that congregation and said, here's what we're going to be doing. We'd love for y'all to be a part of it. We'd love to partner together. And they said, we wish you the best, but we're fine where we are. Thankfully, in my estimation, that congregation over the last few years has grown and done really well, and I'm very proud for them. But they had a local preacher at the time. His name was Jonathan. And anytime after we started growing rather rapidly, And anytime after we started, something would come up. Anytime, for some reason, when some brethren see a congregation grow, they're immediately suspect. They think something is going. They must be doing something wrong.
What are they doing over there?
Which belies God's plan. I mean, think about it. We're suspicious of a church because they're growing. Do we not believe in the gospel at all? Excuse me, I could preach here, but I'm going to. But why do we do that? Well, because we're not growing. And I would say, without being ugly to anyone out there, oftentimes it is pure jealousy. That's all it is. They're growing, we're not growing. They must be doing something wrong because we're doing everything right. So believe the best. So this preacher, anytime something would come, well, I heard they were doing this. Let me tell you a couple of things that people said about us. One guy said, well, they're using a praise team. Well, we aren't, and we weren't, and we wouldn't. I do not want to preach for a church that uses a praise team. I do not want to be a part of that in any way. We had never even discussed at any point having a praise team. Well, somebody else came along and said, what they're doing is they're asking people before they place membership for a copy of their tax form so that they can require that those people give 10%. Which I thought, now I don't think that would help a church grow to do that, but somebody said that about us. Well, this friend Jonathan said, anytime that would happen, he'd say, well, I know Dale. I don't think he would do that. Or he would say, why don't we call the elders and let's just ask them? Well, he made a decision, even though we were not friends before I moved here, he made a decision to believe the best about us. Well, if we go around believing the worst, we're not being biblical. Love believes the best. And so I want to believe the best about a church. I'm not going to immediately jump to. So if congregation are going to work better together, then we've got to determine not to believe the worst about each other, but to believe the best.
Yeah. And quite often it is the preacher that has his ear to the ground and hears this gossip or whatever it is that comes through. So I think this is especially relevant, although a lot of what we're saying, I think almost any of our brothers and sisters need to hear. Yeah. But preachers can run front lines with this, like you said, Jonathan did.
Yes. Yeah. And actually, I don't know if that's in my notes later. It should be if it's not, but it is. So I'm not going to say that point.
Okay.
Move on.
Well, then let's hasten to number 3.
Okay. Number 3 is to resolve the competition. Resolve the competition. Man, I don't know how many congregations are in your area. I know there's more than one. There are probably 5 or 6 within a 20-mile radius, probably 30 or 40. Different types of congregations, different strengths, different weaknesses, but there are different congregations. If you've got more than one congregation in an area, the strong possibility exists in the current world that we live in that someone is going to go from one congregation to the other for whatever reason. Either they don't like the preacher, the song leader, the elders, the decision made. They got at odds with somebody in the congregation. Heard about one place where they felt like their daughter had been molested they felt like the daughter not been molested, but been inappropriately treated by a man in the congregation. They left one congregation where the husband and wife were worshiping one at one and one at the other. And actually, our elders told the husband, you ought to go worship where your wife is. It wasn't all sorts of the biggest reason I've ever heard, or the most odd reason I've ever heard for someone leaving one congregation to go to another, they didn't like the smell of the carpet. That's a good one.
The smell of the carpet.
The smell of the carpet. So now, regardless, let's put regardless of the reason, I pull out all those reasons. Say there's plenty of reasons. It is going to happen if there are more than one congregation in an area. So, if the preachers, probably you said that they're the ones that are in the limelight here, whether we like that or not, it is reality. Are the elders, if they're able and willing to do it, need to get together and make a pact. All right. If someone visits Spring Meadows, where I preach, from the Spring Hill congregation, I will contact the preacher at that congregation and say, hey, the Smiths are with us Sunday. Just want you to be aware of that. And if I can do anything to help, let me know. And then he does the same thing with me. He'll call me. So-and-so's visiting with us and you need to know. It just resolves the competition rather than, this person. I know people are going to leave us and go to another congregation. I know people are going to leave other congregations sometimes and come to us. That's not necessarily ever good, but it's going to happen. So we live in the reality that's going to happen. So let's resolve. We're not going to be in competition with each other for members of the Lord's body. I want members of our congregation. I want members, of the Lord's church to be where they can be healthiest spiritually. And that may be Spring Meadows. It may be Spring Hill. It may be Thompson Station. It may be one of any Town Creek. It may be one of a number of congregations in the area. But I want them to be where they can be healthiest spiritually. So we're not in competition with each other. We're going to resolve that, and we're going to decide that, and that can only happen when two people or two groups of people get together and make a decision. We're not going to be angry when we have a family leaves us and comes to y'all, because in reality, in a few months, somebody's going to leave y'all and come to us.
Yeah. Well, and too often we get ourselves in bad situations where, somebody gets crossways at one congregation, and so they go to the other place, and nobody ever asks them, hey, why are you moving from here to there? And so we think we can move around and leave our bad blood unresolved. And it's like we're on the same team. We're trying to go to the same place when all this is said and done. And Jesus says, work it out. But sometimes at least the cultural understanding is, I can just go over here and forget those people and never have to deal with them again.
Yeah, that's not healthy for anybody spiritually. And so if somebody visits us from Thompson Station next week, and I meet them in the lobby where I will meet them, and hey, I'm Dale. Welcome. You're from around here? Yeah, we worship at Thompson Station. I always I have a standard line. Boy, I love the folks. So that's a great congregation. Glad you're here today. Tell so and so, Mike, the preacher there. I said hi. It's not. I don't want you here. I want you where you'll be healthiest spiritually. If that's here, good. But I don't want you to come here just because we're the church du jour or we're the ones that are next in your line of drama, which is often the case.
Good point. Well, a lot of times too, when the person is interacting with the preacher, sometimes they feel as though the expectation is the preacher's going to start playing for the home team, and say, oh, we really want you here, whatever. I mean, I find that there's this unspoken premonition, what a word to come up with. But anyway, that the preacher is going to try and convince you to come over here, and be here. And people are surprised, I find, when we say, no, just go where you can be faithful to the Lord, and be faithful to him there.
Yeah. And preachers in an awkward situation too, because whether we like this or not, I'm in sales. Every preacher is in sales. Yeah. Now, what we're selling is the gospel of Christ, and we're not selling it, I know, but please don't take me to task over that. But I've got to be out there trying to get people to come to the Lord's family. That's my mission. And so every person that walks in that door that I don't know, I want them back. Every person, because I know that's where they're going to hear the word of God preached, and that's where they're going to be taught, and that's where they're going to be nurtured. And so I want them back. So I've got to draw it back from that and say, oh, if they remember the kingdom already, it's not about, I'm no longer in sales. I'm now in trying to help that person be healthy spiritually. So where can you be healthy spiritually?
Yeah. All right. Are we on number 4? Is that
we're on number 4? Yes, sir.
All right. Sorry, I digress.
Well, I wonder.
It's my job to derail you from your strict outline. I'm sorry.
No. Derail away. Number 4. This one is the poorest worded of all of these, and I don't know how to do it exactly. But if you're going to work together as a congregation, somebody has to be a leader. Somebody has to be a leader. Now, if I'm a 15-year-old boy and I want to go out on a date, and there's a 15-year-old girl that I want to ask out, somebody's got to be a leader in that situation. Somebody's got to do the asking. Somebody's got to say, would you, right?
Mm-hmm.
If two congregations are going to work together, or multiple congregations, somebody's got to be the leader. Somebody's going to say, could we do this? Could we work together? Could we have a picnic together? Could we partner to, picket the local abortion clinic? I don't know what, but could we do that? Somebody's got to be a leader. Now, I want to take that a step further, because I know in some areas there's been conflict, some of it long conflict. Some of that conflict goes back 70 and 80 years between congregations when there was an ungodly division. Mm. I hope I'm not misappropriating these scriptures. They're the individuals, they're not the congregations. But I think it's in Matthew 13 and 18, Matthew 13 and Matthew 18. And I may have my chapters wrong, and I ran out of time in preparation, to be honest about it. But there are two scenarios that are presented. Scenario one, a person comes to worship and they realize they have something against their brother. And the text says they're leave their gift at the altar and go and be reconciled to the brother, and then come back and worship. Scenario two, the person realizes their brother has something against them, and they're to leave their gift at the altar and go and be reconciled and come back and worship. So what I believe is, if there's been division in the past, somebody has to be the person that leaves the gift at the altar. Somebody's going to be big enough to say, I want a part of that division. I don't know everything that happened. There was probably blame on both sides. I've rarely seen cases where there was division, where there wasn't at least some blame on both sides. Forget who was to blame. Let's try to work this thing out, because God loves unity. So somebody's got to be the leader. So if you're going to work together, at some point, if there's been division, somebody's got to be the leader to cause that division to be worked toward being resolved. When there's not been division, there's just two congregations working together, somebody's got to be the leader that steps out to the other congregation and says, let's try something together. So regardless of how it is, point 4 is be a leader.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, somebody's got to initiate that, right? From a preacher's perspective, that can feel sometimes a little strange. I mean, obviously, I guess maybe you want to, what you advise, meet with the shepherds first, or just initiate a preacher-to-preacher meeting, or what do you think as far as how that practically looks?
I would ask my elders. I'd ask my shepherds. Yeah. I'd say, guys, church across town, we don't do anything together. Could we do something together? That's where I would start. And if they say no, I'd say, let's walk through why. Yeah. Well, you don't know what they said about us. Well, I know what you said about Jesus before you were a Christian, so you now need to, be the leader here, and somebody's got to be the bigger person, got to be the leader if there's been a conflict. So, and I think the preacher is the one that usually has to initiate it, because typically in our brotherhood, when there's been division, not me as a preacher necessarily, but the preacher that was there was a big part of the division.
Yeah, well, that's true. And I just think about how long divisions like that can last. I mean, virtually forever. Yeah. And just imagine the good that you could do by, if nothing else, starting that conversation, the lasting change that could be made within a community. That'd be wonderful. I think sometimes too, shepherds they're looking at everything they're responsible for. And it can be hard to think about the church across town when there are so many, fires raging, or irons in the fire, however you want to put it, at home. And so maybe sometimes the preacher's outside perspective could help in that way too.
Yeah. And it's deep, but the division, the non-institutional, the non-Sunday school, that division that occurred years ago, it's now 3 to 4 generations away. And now a lot of those young people that grew up in either side know nothing of that division. When it was your dad or your granddad that was a part of that, you may still have a deep wound because you might remember it. But now 70, 80 years, nobody remembers. Let's get this thing together. Let's figure it out. Get back together.
Yeah. All right. Number 5.
Number 5. I just said together, but number 5 is, if you want to work together, you got to be together. You've got to be together to work together. The best way I've found to turn someone who I am a little suspicious of or who is somewhat of an adversary into an associate is to spend some time with them. What if the two preachers in the community started getting together once a week for coffee? Or what if the elders decided we'll start meeting together once every quarter and just having breakfast together and talking about, life and how to help this community we're in come to the Lord. You got to be together, and this is an agenda that some have misused, but it's still an appropriate agenda. The first time you get together with somebody that you've had some challenge with in the past, the first time you get together is not when you decide we're going to resolve every problem, every challenge we've had. We're just going to spend some time together. We're going to pray together a little bit. We're going to, so 5 seems trite to me, but it has to happen. If congregation is going to work together, they've got to be together so they can know each other first.
I see. So you got to build the relationship. It's almost like any part of ministry. You got to build the relationship before real change can take place, right? Or transformation.
Yes, sir.
All right. We're rolling through these here, how congregations can work better together. Where do we go with number 6?
This podcast could last 6 hours. Number 6.
I know. Yeah.
Some marathon.
Number 6. Podcast-a-thon. Here we go.
Realize that congregations have personalities. Realize the congregation. I remember the first time where I was standing and where I was preaching when that thought occurred to me. I remember what text I was preaching from. And the truth is,
this was one of those sermon revelations. Is that what you're in the middle of preaching?
Those are the best kind.
Yes, they are.
When you're done with it, you have to think back now. Is that really right? Or did I just come with something? It's like,
can I say this out loud right now, or should I simmer on it a little longer?
Right. So just like I've got 2 sons, Philip and Andrew, and very proud of both of them, but they're as different as they can be. And every parent's nodding their head on that right now. You can have 2 kids and it's just amazing how 2 children can be so very different that came from the same set of parents. What is it? It's personality. It's not one's good and one's bad. They're just different. Biblically, congregations have personality. I mean, one congregation, Paul says, your faith is spoken of throughout the whole world. Well, that congregation was known for its faith. One congregation, their giving was known of by all the churches in that region. That was part of the personality. They were a giving congregation. You look at the 7 churches that the letter to Revelation was written to. You talk about personalities. I mean, you got Ephesus, where Priscilla and Aquila were, where Paul was for 2 years, where most people believe John was, where Apollos was, where Timothy was, where if John was there, Mary was there. You've got that. You've got that great congregation. But there was a cold feeling there. They left their first love. That became a part of their personality, not a good part of it, but it became a part of it. Congregation personalities for good and for bad. You have the church at Philippi. I put before you an open door that no man can shut. You've got, and so congregation have personalities. So this is a little challenging, I'm sure, for some of our brethren, but accept that every personality difference is not a theological difference. Because we are so much in love with the text, and we should be, because we are so intent on saying, here's what the Bible says, and we must be. We sometimes try to find a text to disprove that which we simply don't like. It's not a matter of right or wrong. We don't like it, but if we can find a text that can disprove it, then we can go right down that path, and we can tell them they can't do that anymore. Realize sometimes it's just a difference in personality. One congregation does Monday night for the master. Another congregation on Wednesday night goes out, instead of having Bible class on Wednesday night, goes out and does service projects together. Difference in personality. One congregation has a 5 p.m. Sunday night service. Another congregation has a 6 p.m. Sunday night service. Another congregation has a Sunday afternoon service at 1 o'clock. Another congregation on Sunday evening has Bible classes instead of a time of worship. Those are not right or wrong matters. Those are personality things. This is our leaders have decided, our elders have determined this is the best for the spiritual health of these sheep. Let's not divide over matters like that. And let's be so very, very cautious when it comes to drawing those lines over matters of personality, even when we feel strongly about the issue.
So much of this, I was thinking, this is number 6, has to do with just watching ourselves and not reacting outside of the bounds of Scripture, overreacting or swinging the pendulum one direction or the other. And it occurs to me a lot of times we're tempted. It's yes, we don't like that, or that's not what we grew up with, or whatever. But we're also kind of jaded because, well, the congregation in whatever city and state did this, and that was the slippery slope they believed that led them down XYZ path that is absolutely false or unbiblical. But it's hard to look at people case by case and say, hey, listen, this is all right. Be all right with this. I think about Jude. I was recently doing some studies in Jude. We were talking about that a minute ago, and Jude at the end of it, he comes down hard on the false teachers, and he makes it clear that God's justice is going to be poured out on them. But at the end of the letter, he says, but hey, some people who doubt, you need to respond with mercy, and some people you need to snatch them out of the fire. Just because they're false teachers doesn't mean that everybody's a false teacher. And so we just need to be careful about how we react to people.
So you mentioned Jude. Here's something I've always found interesting, and I may be wrong on this. Somebody can correct me, and surely would be helpful in doing so if I am. But this is kind of neat to me. John is known as the apostle of love. You read 1st, 2nd, and 3rd John. John calls out one person after another by name,
That's right.
for right and wrong. Yeah. Jude is the dude that says you contend for the faith. But Jude never calls out anybody that's living by name. Mm-hmm. And again, I'm go back to the personality thing. I think that's a difference in personality in Jude and John. They're both inspired by the Spirit. Ask me how that works, and I'll say I don't understand it. I can tell you some things about it, but I don't understand why this. I don't understand the style thing when it comes to inspiration. God uses that person. I do know that, but again, you've got John, the apostle of love. Just calling people out, standing on Sunday morning and saying, you're wrong, and you're wrong, and you're wrong. And you got Jude, who's known as a guy that you would think would call everybody out, not calling anybody out by name. So
interesting. Yeah, there you go. Throw that over to the side there of the podcast. I appreciate that.
It's been nice having a podcast, hadn't it, Robert?
No, it was good. I appreciate that observation. Where do we go next? Number 7?
Number 7, it's similar to number 6, but it needs to be said, resolve to not make little issues big issues. No. If you're working together, one of the challenges when you get in a situation, in any situation where you are working together, is that little things become big things. So husband and wife, what is it you fight about? You don't fight about, are we going to go to church next Sunday or not? Or, are we going to leave our kids on the front porch tonight and put them up for adoption? We fight about, do you crunch your ice when you're drinking your tea at supper? Not that I've ever experienced anything like that. Okay. We argue over silly things, and the reason is when you're close to each other, the little issues seem to become bigger. So in congregations working together, determine you're not going to let little issues become big issues. Play it out just a little bit further. It's sad to me that some brethren will admit that a matter is not a matter of heaven or hell. But then when someone makes a decision on that matter, they will treat them as suspect if something is not done the way that they would do it. Mm-hmm. And that is a recipe for division, not for working together. Mm-hmm. So we've resolved that let's go here. Having a kitchen in the church building is not a sin. Now, I'm sure there are some who will see this podcast that believe that it is, but probably the majority, we've resolved it's not a sin. Mm-hmm. Okay? But we don't want a kitchen in our church building. and the church across town has a kitchen in the church building. And what I've seen sometimes is the brethren who don't want a kitchen in their church building, but who have resolved it's not a sin to have one in the church building, will treat those people who do have a kitchen in their church building as if there's a little bit left of center. We really can't do anything together. Well, if we want to work together, we've got to get rid of that recipe for division that comes as a result of our thinking that because someone does something different than the way that we wish it was done, or the way we in our wisdom would make a decision to do it, that's not a matter of right or wrong, does it differently than we would do it.
Yeah, good point.
Yeah, you got to remember who the enemy is on that, right?
Yeah.
Satan wants nothing more. Satan has no greater joy than to see when God's people are divided. Satan wants you to be at odds with each other, because if you're working together, you are going to do more together. You're going to do more. You're going to reach more. And so he wants us at odds with each other.
And boy, you want to talk about the influence of the church in a community when two congregations won't, and everybody knows it, right? The whole community knows it. Yeah. They don't get along with each other. Oh, great.
And so you take that person's not a Christian, and on 2 Sundays, you sit that person, they've never been to a congregation of the Lord's people. And you sit that person on 2 Sundays, and one Sunday they sit in one congregation, and the next Sunday they go and sit in another congregation, and you interview them after, and they say, we saw no difference at all in the two. They both partook of the Lord's Supper. They both preached baptism, forgiveness of sins. They both sang a cappella. They both gave. They both prayed. They both had a sermon that was boring. I mean, they had the same stuff going on.
It's apples and apples here. That's great.
And they would say, why are they divided? And if you ask most of our members that when there's been division, they would say the same thing. We don't know why we're divided. If something happened a long time ago, well, figure it out. Okay.
Yeah, good point. All right. Is this number 8?
This is number 8.
Okay.
We've hit the end. And again, how congregations can work better together, determined to reach lost people, determine your mission, and then stay on that mission. And I think if we're going to stay on our mission, we've got to say, all right, here's our mission. The congregation A is in this general region. Congregation B is in this general region. There are lost people in this general region. Congregation A's mission is to reach lost people. Congregation B's mission is to reach lost people. Let's do that together. Let's figure out how to do that together.
Mm-hmm. And that'll help us to your points earlier, not to compete when lost people do come to Christ and are converted, and there's growth and all of that too, which is good. I mean, we attribute the growth, I mean, as Paul did, to God's increase. And so, who are we to feel as though, well, that church across town, they're doing better than we are. God gave the increase. We praise God for that.
Yep. Yes, sir.
So we've been talking about 8 ways that congregations can work better together with Dale Jenkins, and we'll hear maybe some final words or a parting charge or whatever here in just a moment. I want to remind you that Preachers in Training is a part of a network of podcasts known as The Light Network. You can find archived episodes and all the other shows that are available on our website, thelightnetwork.tv. This episode has been a listener requested episode, and we love to hear from you. I've got a good long list for this season, but we're always taking requests, and I've been known to insert some that come in sooner than later and bump others around and all that. I'm the host. I can do that. But you can email me at preachers@thelightnetwork.tv. That's a wonderful way for us to receive your feedback and catch up on your episode ideas, or go into the Facebook group. Just search for Preachers in Training on Facebook. It's a private group, but we'd be glad to welcome you in. We like to keep the conversations focused on preaching and ministry. If you enjoy the podcast, don't forget to subscribe. We're available on YouTube and also in your favorite podcast app. Search for Preachers in Training, or get the master feed for the whole Light Network by searching for The Light Network. Hit that subscribe button. Brand new episodes will release every Thursday from thelightnetwork.tv and other distribution partners. That sounds fancy, doesn't it?
Man, it's like a real network.
Distribution partners. We ask them, would you please carry our content? And they say, yeah, it's free, whatever. And so there we go. Now we're partners. We've been talking about how churches can work better together, congregations of the Lord's church. And the assumption is they're probably in a similar generic region or geographical location, but perhaps even at a distance as well. I'm sure all these principles would apply. We're brothers and sisters together. And as we've taught, preachers often can be the ones that can initiate some of this change, even helping our shepherds and others in some of those ways too. And so that's a good thing to do. Parting words here as we close things out today. Anything we need to button up? You want to circle back around to the inspiration thing? I don't know. Well, we can do a whole podcast on that. I'm just joking.
Yeah, I don't know that I really have anything, awesome to close with. I wish I did, but I guess the most awesome thing you could close with is where we started. That's with the Bible, and it's a verse that we logically think of after we think of the Ephesians verse, Psalm 133. Behold, how good and pleasant it is when brothers dwell in unity. It's like the precious oil on the head, running down on the beard of Aaron, running down on the collar of his robes. It is like the dew of Hermon, which falls on the mountains of Zion. For there the Lord has commanded his blessings, life forevermore. God wants unity, and we should as well.
Yeah. And that's more than just unity among all the people who worship together at one location or in one congregation. I think when we preach on unity, that's usually the direction that we focus. And for good reason, right? We've all been here during COVID and everything, but for other reasons as well, we ought to make it clear that we're talking about the whole church. All of those who are in Christ ought to be unified. It's neat work.
We made it 40 minutes in, and you had to use the word COVID. I mean, we did. We're doing so well.
I'm sorry. We were there. I couldn't help it. We'll edit it out. We won't edit it out.
We could, but we don't have time to.
Yeah, who's got time for editing?
Robert, always an honor to be with you.
Thank you. Thank you very much for the time. I appreciate it very much. And again, thejenkinsinstitute.com. You guys got to go check it out. We appreciate you and your brother and all the work that all you guys do. It means so much to us.
Thank you.
It's going to do it for this edition of Preachers in Training. Thanks for being with us today. Until next time, I'm Robert Hatfield. Let's go preach the word.